Number 1.
Carlene June Grinenberg went missing from Modesto, California on November 1, 1973. She was last seen as she left her home and began walking. A family friend followed her until she reached a highway, where she was seen hitchhiking and ultimately getting into a blue or green truck with a male driver. There is some confusion as to her age. NAMA states that she was 16, while a Modesto Bee article says she was 14. I'm inclined to go with a newspaper article, since the information was more than likely supplied by her parents, plus, I think she looks closer to 14 in her photo. I couldn't find a birth record to eliminate any doubts, though. It appears she wasn't born in California. The family had moved to Modesto from Southern California a few months prior to her disappearance. There is really no information in articles or online case files that give any indication of what her intentions may have been. However, a couple things lead me to speculate that she may have been having problems at the time of her disappearance. One is pretty obvious: she was 14 and transplanted in a new city, away from everything she knew. NAMA states she was last seen at 12:29 p.m. November 1, 1973 was a Thursday. For some reason, it appears she wasn't at school. Why does a family friend follow her as she walks to the highway? If it were out of fear for her safety, why watch as she gets into a truck with an unknown male? And why not follow the truck? Did Carlene get picked up immediately as she approached the highway, or did the friend sit in his or her car, waiting until she got a ride? I'd guess there was a reason, some sort of circumstance that caused the friend to be concerned. Her family seems to believe she's alive. They moved back to Southern California shortly after Carlene's disappearance, but have continued to own Carlene's childhood home, although they don't live there, thinking she may go back there at some point. It would help to know if Carlene was having problems, if she told anyone where she was going, or if she was homesick for Southern California. Did she take anything with her when she walked away from the home? I stumbled across this unsolved homicide, which occurred in Modesto. On July 16, 1975, the body of Donna Joanne Peoples, age 17, was found in a grape vineyard near Mays Boulevard and Dakota Avenue in West Modesto. It was believed that she was killed elsewhere and disposed of in the vineyard. The articles on this homicide do not indicate when or how she died. It is known that the day she went missing, she had been out with friends and told them she was going on a date with a man named Lex. I have no reason to think these two cases are connected, but still thought it was worth mentioning, in case Carlene had mentioned the Lex, or perhaps knew Donna. There has been some speculation that Donna may have been a Zodiac victim, but no evidence of that theory. There is another missing persons case from Modesto, of Sylvia Stanley, who also reportedly got into a blue or green truck, but this was in 1986, probably not the same truck 13 years later, but more likely a strange coincidence. Sylvia Stanley is thought to be a possible speed-free killer's victim. There's really no way for me to lean toward one theory or another in this case. There are no unidentified females listed in NAMUS from Stanislaus County. I'd sure like to know what was going on with Carlene in the days and hours leading up to her disappearance. I hope she ran away and has found happiness somewhere.
Number 2.
Carlene Brown, age 19, went missing from Rawlins, Wyoming on July 4, 1974. She was last seen at the Little Britches Rodeo with her friend, Christy Gross. Christy went missing at the same time, but was found deceased in 1983. Her remains were located in a field 3 miles south of Sinclair. She had been the victim of a homicide by 2 blows to the head. Carlene is still missing. Carlene and Christy are believed to be victims of Royal Russell Long, a serial killer who often worked at carnivals and fairs around the country, and was known to be in the area in the summer of 1974. He abducted young women in pairs. Other examples of his probable victims are Charlotte Kinsey and Cinda Pallett, and Sharon Baldigal and her unnamed friend who escaped and survived. They could have been victims of Ted Bundy as well. Bundy's last known victim had been Georgianne Hawkins in Seattle, Washington on 6/11/1974, then appeared to take a break until Janice Ott and Denise Naslund in St. Park, Washington on 7/14/1974. Could he have been to Wyoming in between? The blows to the head found on Carlene's friend Christy are consistent with Bundy, as is the long straight hair parted in the middle. While all missing persons cases are disturbing, particularly those believed to be victims of serial killers, Carlene's case has an added complication that, in all probability, will prevent her case from ever being solved. She was adopted. The identity of Carlene's birth relatives are not known, and both of her adoptive parents are now deceased. With no dental records available, a familial DNA sample is the only hope of identifying her, if she has been, or may be, located. I've searched pages upon pages of adoption inquiries on various registries, hopeful that one of her biological relatives had searched for her. I didn't find anything close. I then read an outline of the Wyoming statute regarding adoption records, and found something promising, but it came with another snag. Wyoming allows for the release of personal information on adoptees and birth families, under the condition that both parties give their consent. Either the adoptee, or one of the birth relatives, must petition the court, who will in turn appoint a confidential intermediary to contact the other party and ask for their consent. Without the adoptee, this seems like a dead end. Just because I figured I had nothing to lose by asking, I contacted the University of Wyoming's law clinic. They do pro bono cases and offer legal advice to those who are unable to afford private counsel. I explained the predicament, and that I would like to know how to request a confidential intermediary to request a DNA sample from her biological family. Their identities wouldn't even need to be released, but their DNA could be entered for comparison, and there'd at least be a chance that her case could someday be solved. Carlene's parents would likely be in at least their 60s now, so I thought it would be a good time to attempt to get the ball rolling. We shall see. I will update if I get anywhere with this request, though I don't have my hopes up terribly high. A childhood friend of Carlene's describes a spot near Casper, Wyoming, that gives her an eerie feeling whenever she passes by, strong enough to wake her while sleeping. I'd be interested in knowing where this spot is, so I could take a look at the area on Google Earth. You never know.
Number 3.
Erin Lee Foster, age 18, and Jeremy Lee Bechtel, age 17, went missing from Sparta, Tennessee on April 4, 2000. Jeremy was spending the night at his cousin's home and asked to be dropped off at a party. He apparently left the party with Erin in her 1998 Pontiac Grand Am. Jeremy and Erin were childhood friends, by most accounts, although some state they were a couple. Erin and Jeremy were reportedly last seen in her car, outside of Sparta, at around 10 p.m. Neither of them have been heard from again, and her car has never been found. Although there have been persistent rumors of Erin's ex-boyfriend being involved in her disappearance, and he has been named a person of interest by law enforcement, he has been cooperative and passed a lie detector test. He was said to be one of the last people to see Erin and Jeremy. Although I don't know anyone involved personally, my opinion is that her ex-boyfriend was not responsible. I base this on years of reading about missing persons cases. Jealousy-induced violence is generally a heat-of-the-moment type of thing. Since it's been reported that Erin and Jeremy's last confirmed sighting was at this party, and her ex-boyfriend was one of the last to see them, I would have to speculate that he was at the party. Would a jealous ex-boyfriend lure Erin and her friend away from the party, but take a separate vehicle, since Erin's never surfaced, and the ex would have had to get back somehow, meet them somewhere secluded, harm them, dispose of both of them and their car, and drive back to the party, her home, or wherever, and have nobody notice anything? It just doesn't seem likely to me. I could see a jealous ex-boyfriend possibly luring her away with him in his own car, but not another guy. There have also been rumors that Erin was seen alive and well in Florida. Several tips have corroborated this, including one sighting by a retired police officer. Tennessee law enforcement do not believe the person sighted is Erin, but someone who resembles her. The person who claimed to have seen Erin and Jeremy in the car, and apparently knew them, supports the theory that they may be in Florida, although neither of their social security numbers have been used since 2000. I was very skeptical of this Florida theory, even with the repeated sightings, until I read that Erin's family has declined to submit DNA. There could be many reasons for this. Possibly, as the article suggested, they just don't want to grapple with a worst-case scenario, but it could also be that they have some valid reason to believe that she is alive and well. I really hope that is the case. Yet more rumors have surfaced that the two were buried in a well in White County, which resulted in several area wells being searched by law enforcement. Not much has been said about the party they attended, if either of them had any confrontations with anyone there, or if Erin's ex-boyfriend was actually there. Were they drinking or using drugs which might have impaired her driving? Would she have driven along any waterways, or on any unsafe roads on her way home? Was the location where they were seen at 10 p.m. indicative of where they might have been headed? Were they headed in the direction of their homes, or away, into the vast open space that surrounds Sparta? Were they near any businesses or traffic lights that may have had surveillance? According to news articles, the rumors keep coming, around the same time every year. I hope that buried somewhere among the rumors is the truth about what happened to these two teenagers.
Number 4.
Charlotte Jean Loomis, age 14, went missing from Eatontown, New Jersey on September 1, 1972. Charlotte was having problems at her family home in Escoda, Michigan, where she lived with her mother, stepfather and several siblings. She went to stay for the summer with her older sister Carol and her husband, who lived on Fort Monmouth Army Base in New Jersey. On or around September 1, 1972, Charlotte was scheduled to depart from Newark International Airport in New Jersey and arrive back home at Saginaw Airport in Michigan. Charlotte's luggage arrived in Michigan, but Charlotte, according to her parents, was not on the plane. It's thought that she may have had a layover in Ohio, but this is not known for certain. The exact circumstances of when she was last seen have never been confirmed. One can only assume that Carol and her husband took her to the airport, but even that is not known for certain. So we don't really know for sure that it was Charlotte herself who checked the luggage, or if she was actually seen boarding the plane. Back then, security at airports was much more lax, so it was common for family to accompany travelers to the gate, but she could have just been dropped off outside. It's really hard to narrow down what could have happened to her. Did something happen to her in Eatontown, or at Newark Airport, or in Ohio during the layover? Or did she make it back to Michigan in spite of her parents claiming otherwise? Carol and her then-husband, Thomas Friday, are both deceased, as are Charlotte's parents, but Charlotte has many other siblings who are still living. They are divided on whether their sister Carol had anything to do with her disappearance. Some believe Charlotte made it back to Michigan, and that her stepfather may have played a role. The idea that Carol and her husband hid Charlotte or helped her avoid going home doesn't seem incredibly likely to me. The biggest reason I say this is because it doesn't appear that her parents made much effort to find her, and it seems that Carol could have just said she's staying here and probably wouldn't have met much resistance. Taking her luggage to the airport and checking it in seems a bit extreme, especially since Charlotte would likely have needed the items in her suitcase. On the other hand, it seems like a pretty risky move for Charlotte's parents to claim she never got off the plane, if it wasn't the truth. Had she been on the plane, enough people would have seen her that their story could easily have been proven false. That leaves me leaning strongest toward the idea that she was either harmed in New Jersey, or that she did run away from the airport. Another of the many things that are in question is Charlotte's history of running away. One of Charlotte's nieces has said she remembers hearing that Charlotte ran away all the time, while a good friend of hers from school said Charlotte would talk about running away a lot, but never actually did it. If she had indeed run away several times before, I could find it much more likely that she did it again. Perhaps she became involved with someone while on the base in New Jersey. Of course, I have several questions on this case. Were Carol and her husband ever questioned? Whose fingerprints were on the handle of her suitcase? Did the flight crew remember seeing her on the plane? Unfortunately, we will probably never get the answers to these questions. Any police report that may have been filed at the time is long gone, and it hasn't been confirmed that one ever existed. Charlotte's siblings are interested in learning what happened, but it wasn't until they became adults that they began searching. Their memories are fuzzy since they were children themselves at the time, and it wasn't discussed much over the years. One sibling recalled how they were told to drop it when they started asking questions. As I was getting my data together to prepare for this post, I stumbled across a plea from someone only identified as Rick, who believes she was last seen in Virginia in 1974 at Fort Lee, another Army base. Were Carol and her husband living in Virginia in 1974? Did Charlotte ever attend high school in Virginia? It happens to be the state where Carol and Thomas had married prior to relocating to New Jersey. It gives me a small hope that Charlotte may be alive and well somewhere. On a side note, Pamela Hobley and Patricia Spencer vanished from Escoda, Michigan in 1969. They were high school students at the time. Normally, I would not find that super odd, and I don't at all believe the cases are related, but Escoda currently has a population of about 900 people. With Charlotte having at least 10 siblings, I'd be surprised if the families weren't acquainted either through school or just from living in such a small town. A 20-year-old male named Harold Covey also vanished from Escoda under suspicious circumstances in 1976. He also remains missing to this day.
Number 5.
Mary Ann Mosey, age 42, went missing from New Orleans, Louisiana on March 3, 2001. She was last seen getting into a taxi in front of her residence. She had luggage with her and said she would be back that weekend. She never returned and has never been heard from again. This isn't the first time I've seen a case with a rather odd last known location. Samantha Baremore was also last seen getting into a taxi. Elizabeth Mondelli was last seen entering a home that wasn't hers. Apparently, she wasn't seen inside the home or leaving the home, so yeah, she disintegrated into thin air in the doorway. Sorry, but it irks me. How hard would it be to check Terry's phone records and see what cab company she called? Then talk to the cab driver and find out where he or she took her. Even the call takers at cab companies usually ask, "Where are you going?" prior to sending the taxi. Her phone records would probably hold a clue as to who she was going to see, as well. Terry had Parkinson's disease, so depending on how severe it was, there is a likelihood that the cab driver would have remembered her. It might not solve the mystery of her disappearance, but I am confident that it would lead to an update of where she was last known to be. Of course, it has already been 12 years, and memories may well have faded by now. It was probably another "don't worry, she'll come home in a few days" deal back in 2001, although it appears her family had her declared dead in 2004 seems awfully soon. For someone who was last seen getting in a cab with luggage, her family must have suspected something.